Here at the Combine with Steve Palazzolo, senior analyst at Pro Football Focus, perhaps director of player personnel at Pro Football Focus.
Working on that, yeah.
In the works there. What a difference a year makes, right, for the Cleveland Browns from a year ago this time to where we are now. Kevin Stefanski and head coach Andrew Berry, now the general manager. What do you think of really kind of everything that's transpired here over the last 12 months?
There was so much optimism a year ago at this time, and I think there's still room for optimism. We're still big believers in Baker Mayfield and what he can do and what he brings to the table. I think Stefanski brings a nice offensive system. They had a lot of success at Minnesota, the outside zone scheme and all that stuff, which again, if you look around the league, the copycat league, the Shanahans, the McVays of the world, they're all running it, and there's a certain level of success that you can kind of expect there. So I think the run game, the play action game, and getting Baker back on track, I think it's going to be another exciting time for Browns fans.
We certainly hope so. Let's talk about Baker Mayfield, because obviously the second half of that rookie season was phenomenal, and everybody had really high hopes. Took a little bit of a step back, as the whole team did really in year two. What did you guys see when you dove into Baker that said, okay, here's what happened, but here's why we're also still so optimistic?
Yeah, so I mean, we just have so much data on him being good, and this was the first year he wasn't good, and he wasn't as bad as the stats showed. So on the encouraging end, all the interceptions, maybe like half of them were really on him. Had some bad luck there. I've never seen a team as not on the same page as that offense right now. I mean, tap passes were an issue. OBJ running the wrong route. When he did run the right route, it's an overthrow, it's a drop, just everything was going wrong. So I think it's going to be tough to be that bad as far as everything going wrong at the same time. I think Baker gets back on track. As far as his actual performance, when we were listing his weaknesses coming out, it's like, hey, some pocket presence issues. He might hold the ball too long, but he did it only a few times. Last year he did it way more often. So his weaknesses just, really showed up way more than it had previously. So I think there's enough data that says he's accurate. He can get the ball down the field. They got some playmakers to throw to, so I'm expecting them to bounce back.
And I think part of that sometimes can be exacerbated by the offensive line, and I think everybody would say coming into this offseason, that's probably the Browns' biggest need.
It is, and even last year, too, it was like, hey, we got these playmakers, you got Baker, will the offensive line hold up? And even when they did block, again, it was just like everything went wrong, right? And it was like one thing on a given play, and when they did block well, why is Baker leaving a clean pocket? When they didn't block well, he had no time. So I think it was in his head early on. I don't trust my tackles. So I think they have a chance to, completely revamp the O-line, gain some confidence from Baker, have him hang in the pocket a little bit more. When he does that, he can certainly deliver it.
When you talk about trust, that was the word we used. It just seemed like he wasn't trusting what he was seeing, wasn't trusting his eyes, wasn't trusting the protection, wasn't trusting the receivers to be in the right place, and that leads to chaos. In this kind of Shanahan-Kubiak system, though, it's all about precision. It's all about details, everybody being where they need to be. And you saw in Minnesota for Kevin Stefanski last year, that was a team that overachieved based on probably what people expected them to be.
Yeah, they did. I mean, they were a team, even like early in the season, I'm a big Dalvin Cook fan, and when you look at what he did above and beyond that offensive line, the scheme put him in good position, but the offensive line didn't block that great. I thought the scheme worked well, and then the running back worked well. You got Nick Chubb. He always does a great job above and beyond what's given. The precision part of it, though, is really key. They love to go progression system. There's a lot of detail. There'll be some freebies. There'll be some rollouts and screen game that they, the entire Shanahan tree is really, really good at, the entire scheme. But Baker's got to have that attention to detail as far as progressions go. And the number of times the receivers were not on the same page last year, that needs to be fixed, obviously. So there's optimism, but there's also that challenge of the new system and being on the same page.
Do you think we're seeing a shift, at least with this style of an offense, to more of a two tight end or even the traditional fullback? You look at the Niners with Juszczyk, they had Kittle and Dwelly there as the tight ends, and then in Minnesota, Irv Smith was drafted to go alongside Rudolph. That's an area probably the Browns they're going to want to buttress that room, in addition to David Njoku and perhaps Ricky Seals-Jones coming back.
Yeah, so I think there's no real trend as far as 32 teams, but the Ravens were tight end heavy, and attacking the middle of the field is definitely a favorable place to attack, right? And I think it's all about you can't just trot a fullback out there unless he can create some kind of mismatch, and I think that's the key. The Niners did a great job of Juszczyk, creating those mismatches. So when you have guys that can line up in the backfield, line up a tight end, get on a linebacker, create those mismatches, that's the key if you have the personnel. But it is a great way to win in this league.
When you think about this Browns team, what's one thing perhaps in free agency? Safety is something that pops into my mind as a big need. Anthony Harris was in Minnesota, seems logical. What's kind of, other than tackle, what do you see as the biggest needs for this team?
I think just nailing down everything in the back seven, from safety to figuring out Joe Schobert, from figuring out just coverage on the back end. Having Denzel Ward and Greedy Williams is great, but you truly can't have enough good coverage players. So I think sorting out the back end, obviously sorting out tackle, as you said, but it's a pass the ball, stop the pass type of league. So I'm all about the secondary and a good coverage linebacker.
And hopefully Joe Woods coming in, who knows that part of the field very, very well, certainly will help the Browns. Steve, thank you so much for the time, and hopefully we'll be talking about Browns' success, realizing that potential this year.
Absolutely. Sounds great.